I'm choosing to jump in it for the long haul, not for a little while. I'm choosing to dedicate my life to this work. And that's the one reason why this podcast is here. It's because I'm dedicating my life, my time, my energy. My PhD, my studying right now, everything that I'm sacrificing now is because I am passionate about the work that I do with young people. Yo, what's up, family? Welcome back to Building the Block podcast. Here, the conversation will always be real, it's always going to be relevant, and it's always going to be restorative. And so we are in part two. We are in part two of how to be a great mentor. Last week, I gave 6 principles on things that I've learned throughout my life working with young people. And this week, I'm going to give another 6 of things that I really processed and worked through and came to the conclusion, like, this is what it looked like for me to do mentorship well over the years. And I want you to be able to take these with you. I'm not stingy with the wealth of knowledge. Like, I learned this over the 10 years of practice, and I'm like, here, you can have it all, right? So I want to make sure I'm adding value to your life, to the work that you do. If you're an educator, if you're a teacher in the classrooms, these principles work for you as well. So don't think I'm just talking about mentors. I'm talking to anyone who works with you. So that's the youth pastor, the youth leadership team, educators, teachers, whoever may be, coaches. This for you. So if you didn't, make sure you watch last week's episode. But anyways, let's jump right in. So the first principle for this week we're going to be thinking about is just be vulnerable. That one seems really easy, right? It seems like something that, oh, this makes sense. Just be vulnerable. But you'd be surprised at just how being vulnerable is for some people. And I was speaking at a church, and the congregation was a little bit older, and I was a young guy up there speaking, preaching to the church, and one thing that I brought out when I'm talking to like the older generation is that this younger generation, we need to hear your struggles. And I brought out because we only see marriages that lasted 30, 40 years, and with divorce rates as high as they are now. It's like, man, I want to hear what y'all had to actually go through. I don't want to just hear the fluff at this point. And Gen Z, they definitely don't care about fluff. They want the real. And so being vulnerable is something that is crucial. I think you have to really practice and understand where there's vulnerability and then there's like just going too far. It's like, okay, there's a place where you can just overshare information that it just becomes unhelpful. But being vulnerable and sharing some of your broken moments, some of your hardships, some of the things that you had to encounter and to wrestle through growing up, it's definitely something that's really good. If you remember a few episodes back, I shared a little bit of my story. And there's so much more to my story, but I shared just how mentorship could have helped me throughout my life. And that's the story that I use when I work with young people, when I'm teaching and talking to young people, when I'm being a mentor, when I'm working in these classrooms, working and trying to help these young men to make better decisions. Well, I use my life story because there's enough messed up stuff in my past that can help open the eyes of someone else. And that's what I hope that it does. So be vulnerable, share your story. People, like, honestly speaking, if I'm talking to you and we've been building or trying to build a relationship for a while and I don't know your story, I just don't think that you can connect to a person that way. You might feel differently, and that's okay. And everybody's entitled to an opinion. But I don't think you can really build an authentic relationship with anybody if you don't know their story. Think about your friends. Think about your inner group. How many of them would you consider to be real friends and other people who are just people who are in your life for a season? And if you answer that question honestly, how many of them actually know your story and how many of them you know their stories. This mutual reality of knowing stories. Because sometimes I know people who are good listeners and they know everybody's story, but they wouldn't consider everybody to be their friend. And the people who's like, yeah, this person knows my story, they don't always consider that person a friend as well. And so as a mentor, someone who works with youth, you just got to be vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable. And sometimes invulnerability is being authentically who you are. And I've seen that happen so many times over the years. Educators who are most authentic, like who just are who they are, don't try to be anybody else, and don't try to, impress students and stuff like that. I've seen students love them more than the teachers and the educators and the mentors who try to be somebody that they're not. And I think vulnerability says that this is who I am. I might not be cool in your eyes. I might be corny or whatever kids call it today. Like, I might be that, but I care about you. Honestly, you can go so much further if a student knows that you care about them. How you look, how you dress. Like me, I can't play. I mean, I can pretend like I can play basketball, but I'm not a basketball player. So when I'm working with my 10th and 11th graders, like they jokingly say, man, Phil can't play ball. But they know I love them though. If I call and say like, yeah, I'm trying to do something, oh, they like, come on. If I text their parents and be like, yeah, I'm trying to pick up so-and-so, they be like, man, you ain't got to ask, just come get them. That's that vulnerability. You can just be who you are. Just love them, connect with them. Second one, they are eager to learn. It's a principle. Young people are eager to learn. I think sometimes we think it's only the teacher's job to teach, and sometimes the name of their occupation applies, right? Teachers teach, right? But who else teaches? Parents teach, mentors teach, coaches teach. If a student has many teachers in their lives, how much better you think their lives will look? Today, if you listen to any social media influencer who is selling courses or whatever it may be, you could just find somebody. The one thing that they always tell you, especially when they talk about building wealth, the one thing they always tell you is that you need a mentor. It is language they use all across the board. You need someone to teach you the game plan to get to where you want to be. And it's never just one person, it's multiple people. Even now myself, I have multiple people who I learn from, who I gather wisdom and information from. So that is the posture that we want to have with our young people. We want to be someone else who stands in the gap, who is able to teach. And for me, that's one of the reasons why I don't believe that I'm called to be a teacher in a classroom. I love it. I mean, I love what they do, but I don't necessarily like the concept of teaching to take a test. And you might, people who have different pedagogical approaches and things, and I appreciate all of them. But I do realize is that it's just not me. Because I'd rather take life and teach life lessons than to try to teach or curriculum that I developed or something like that, which I'm working on. But I just don't like the confines of that classroom space. And so that's why I want to encourage people who are not in the classroom that you are also a teacher. You are also someone who's going to be in the lives of a young person that's going to teach them something that they hold on to for the rest of their lives. Because let's just be honest. I'm not the best person with math, and I've had some really good math teachers in my life. And to this day, I promise you, I'm still not the best person with math. But I remember things that my music teacher taught me to this day. I remember things that mentors have taught me over the years to this day. I remember conversations of things that my father taught me when I was young and being a knucklehead and barely listening. I remember things from then that I apply today. So let's create this posture of recognizing that young people, they are eager to learn. They want to be taught. And I do think it's an adult's job, the teacher's job, the educator, the coach. I do believe it's our job to learn how to teach them. I said it. Third one, correct, challenge, and cultivate. 3-part, all moving in the same direction. When it comes to young people, it's undeniable. There is going to be a time where you have to correct them. You have to be okay with telling a young person like, yo, you was out of pocket for that one. For example, I'm currently working at a school, and I have 5th and 6th graders who I'm constantly working with. I'm like a big brother to a bunch of students in the school, but when it comes to 5th and 6th graders, especially my young girls, I am one of the cool teachers, or the cool ones in the building. One of the reasons is because I'm not necessarily the person that does the discipline or the calling home, right? So I got a little scapegoat, a little cushion there. But oftentimes when I'm talking to them, they are, and I build these relationships, so don't take this the wrong way, but they'll come up and be like, oh man, so-and-so get on my nerve. They doing too much. And for me, my response is, ma'am, listen to what you're saying. You're literally doing too much right this moment. And oftentimes, I just listen to what they're saying is happening. And as I'm listening, I'm breaking it apart. It's like, okay, well, what could you have done differently in this area? Okay, what could you have done differently in this area? I'm correcting them in many cases. A student actually told me once, she was just like, yeah, man, why are you always, trying to correct? And it was funny because she realized that she was wrong actually. And so she made a joke like, man, why you had to make me see that I was wrong? Like I was doing just fine thinking the other person was wrong. But so correcting is an important part of being in the life of a youth, of a young person, challenging them too. I think a part of growing and developing a growth mindset over a fixed mindset is challenging our young people. I've realized that a lot of young people, they don't have resiliency. They just don't have the grit to press through and to keep going. When things get tough, they literally want to give up. I was on a trip to the museum and I had 3 young men. And I wanted to watch them and see how they would do together. And they were doing a scavenger hunt and trying to find different things on this list. And one of them came up with the idea, let's go in order, first to last. And so they spent like 30 minutes in one area. And I'm sitting here looking over the list and I'm like, in the same area where they're looking for one thing that wasn't even there, they spent 30 minutes wasting time when they could have had 3 items on the list, on the scavenger hunt. And through it, I gave a couple of suggestions. I said, like, hey, you're spending a lot of time here. Why not try to go other places? They were focused. They were like, nah, we're going to do this. And so I kept on, giving little hints. And then after a while, I told them, I said, hey, you have missed 3 items on this list in this area because you were focused on one. And then it was like, all right, we're listening now. Tell us. And I was like, nope. You have to figure out how to work together. Because though they were friends, they were friends, but when it came to leading or leadership and healthy followership, they didn't understand those processes. They weren't listening to each other. And so I pulled out all of these things. Hey, how about you listen? Hey, this isn't working now. It's time for somebody else to try to take the lead. Like, and work with them in these areas. But I forced them and I challenged them to think and to work together. And the thing is that I didn't tell anybody what I was doing. I didn't tell them what I was doing. Another teacher was there, and she was looking and trying to figure out why they were so confused. I was like, yeah, like right now they are in the process of working together. They have to learn what it means to work together. And so challenging doesn't always mean that you have to, the student has to know what's happening. You have to be strategic in what that looks like. But we have to be challenging our young people, because we want to see these young people grow up to be healthy, thriving adults. And healthy, thriving adults don't get that way by giving up all the time. And often our young people, giving up is easy. You want to challenge them. So you have correct, you have challenge, you have cultivate. And I use that word cultivate because when I think of cultivating something, when I think about that process of like just or correcting and challenging, what it is doing in that young person, it's building them up. It's creating something inside of them that can and will flourish. And so that is what all three, I want them to kind of work together, because as you correct and you challenge, that cultivating process is automatically happening. And what is it? You get a fixed mindset you get a growth mindset over this fixed mindset. You get a mindset that says, okay, there's this obstacle, how do I overcome it? Versus there's this obstacle, I'm ready to quit. And my oldest daughter, I raised her that way. I raised her in such a way where if she's doing something, I almost always tell her, I was like, yo, you don't get to quit. And a part of me saying that is to not to just be mean or show tough love. For me, what I always did is if I was, for example, let me give an example actually. She was playing hide and seek once, and it's her and another kid, and the kid had a good hiding spot. I'm not gonna lie, I knew where the kid was, but I'm like, I'm not snitching. I'm not helping her, right? And she was ready to quit. I said, no, you don't get to quit. You're looking in the same spot, or I didn't actually say the same spot. I just said, if what you are doing is not working, you need to try and do something different. And basically what she was doing, she was looking in one area, the same thing with the guys I was on a trip with, looking in one area and it wasn't working. And then once she looked in another area, she was able to find the kid. And so that is what I specifically mean when I say, man, I don't give basically my daughter opportunity to quit, and I try to teach my nephew the same thing. And most of our young people need to have these same conversations, because if something gets hard, the first thing they want to do is quit. You go in the kindergarten classroom and the kid can't open their fruit snacks. Well, I'm not just taking the fruit snacks and opening it. No. I'm going to show them where the little split is and let them do it. Grit, teach them, correct them, challenge them. All right, number 4, we're moving along. Invest in the long term. I am developing a mentorship program, and I'll tell you about it in another episode. But I'm developing a mentorship program, and I do plan to launch in August of 2023. I'll share more in another episode. But when I looked into mentorship programs, almost all of them have a criteria of a mentor committing to at minimum 1 year. And I think that's good and all. But if you are saying you want to work with youth, if you're saying you want to mentor, coach, whatever it may be, I think you need to commit to long term. You need to commit to being there for the long haul, not just for a brief little season. And here's why. Our young people have experienced abandonment a lot in their life. In fact, I know a student whose mom was said that she was going to take him to Disney World, or Florida or something like that for the weekend, and she literally left without him with another guy. And he experienced that type of hurt. And even with that same kid, I told him that I was going to take him to a basketball game. And the day of the game or the week of the game, I was contacting mom. Mom changed her number and everything. And he remembered the date. And so when I saw him again, he looked me in my eyes and said, "You lied to me." Oh, no, matter of fact, he said, "You left me." And so for him, that one broken promise, even though it wasn't my fault, and I could have just been like, "Oh, no, I tried." It's like, no, I had to take that on the chin. And that right there is why I say you have to commit to the long term. Because some of these young people, even the teacher I talked about in the last episode at Eagle Academy, in the book that I'm reading to, she came back the following year, and I'm like, we have to commit to making a long-term investment, because when we are taking that time and really pouring into these young people, we get to really see them grow. First, we have to let them know that they can trust us. We have to let them know that, like, yeah, I'm not just here for a year. I'm here to see you graduate. I'm here to see you get married. I'm here to see you become a doctor, whoever you want to be. But I'm gonna be there every step of the way. I think that's the posture anyone working with young people need to have. That's not a maybe. I feel like that's a posture that you need to have. And it goes back to one of the first things I said in the last episode, is count the cost. A part of that cost to count is, am I willing to invest in the long term? Because you create more harm when you're here for a season and you're gone than you do. I had a student, one of my first mentees, when I first got into teaching, and like, he showed tremendous growth over the 2 years I worked with him. And then I allowed myself to get busy, and I stepped out of his life, and I wasn't there. And then, one day I was just like, man, I got to get back connected in. And so I got back with him. And then the same process happened. I disappeared again. And this time I was just like, man, I'm creating more harm than good, because I'm not even consistent. But that is actually, let me just move on a little bit, right? So the fifth one is consistency. And so back to what I was just saying in regards to investing long term, it's also important to remain consistent. And like I was saying about that one mentee who, after a while, I wasn't consistent with, it broke my heart, because he didn't deserve that. And so I can make up all the excuses. I was in school, I was a parent, a father full time. I had all these things going on. But that's not an excuse to not be consistent. And most of it had to do was because, and I was still learning too, like, this was maybe 6-7 years ago. So I learned this lesson a long time ago about investing in the long term. So now with my nonprofit and the work that I'm getting ready to embark on, I am embarking on it for the long term. I'm choosing to jump in it for the long haul, not for a little while. I'm choosing to dedicate my life to this work. And that's the one reason why this podcast is here. It's because I'm dedicating my life, my time, my energy. My PhD, my studying right now, everything that I'm sacrificing now is because I am passionate about the work that I do with young people. And I want to add value to you who are listening. I want to add value to my community, and I want to build it up. And I realize I have to be consistent. I have to consistently show up here for this podcast, because there's some people who are listening who like I said, they have that same passion, but they just need to hear somebody else. Many different reasons, but being consistent with these young people. Letting them know that, man, despite everything that's been going on in your life, I'm going to be here. I'm not going nowhere. Even when you curse me out and you go through your phases, like, nah, I'm going to press through. I'm going to still be here. Because those self-sabotaging habits, they happen. Kids will push every button they can just to see if you are going to stay. So invest in a long-term consistency. And then the last one is just commit. You might think, oh, consistency is the same as commitment. You might think investment or investing in the long term is the same as commitment. But I think that what I'm saying for this one is I'm saying you have to commit to all 11 of the other principles. You have to commit to everything that comes with being a teacher, everything that comes with being a principal, everything that comes with being a coach, everything that comes with being a mentor. You have to commit. You don't get to just pick and choose what you want to commit to. You have to commit to the whole process. Because the youth who are thriving and they point back to a teacher or a mentor or something like that, the youth who say they had a strong system, they had a strong system of people who committed to the good times or the bad times, the hard, the struggles, the obstacles. Do you want to be that person? If the answer is yes, then I need you to commit. If the answer is yes, I want you to leave in the comment and say, yes, I am ready to commit to youth. And if you're not, it's okay. But if you are ready, if you have already been doing it, man, I salute you. But whatever your decision is today, begin with counting the cost. Start there. Begin. Count the cost. Listen to this episode. Listen to the last episode. Count the cost. And then commit. If you are ready, pray about it. Fast. And commit. So,